Okay, and welcome back, students who are doing the math for business and finance and math applications. Chapter 15, the summary practice test. I'm not going to be spending much time on this. As you saw, this is extremely repetitive if you were looking at the drill problems and the word problems and working them through yourself. So I'm not going to be spending a lot of time. I'm just going to go through the numbers. And if something out of the ordinary pops into my head, which happens from time to time, I'll explain it. But let's just work through the problems and get through these. Okay, so number one. It says here, Pat bought a home for $180,000 with a down payment of $10,000. Her rate of interest is 6% for 30 years. Calculate A, her monthly payment, B, her first payment broken down into interest and principal, and C, the balance of the mortgage at the end of the month. So basically, we're creating a amortization schedule here, all right? So 180,000 less the down payment of 10,000 means we're financing 170,000. Okay. To find the monthly payment, the 170,000, we drop the 1,000, or we divide by 1,000, and we're left with 170. And we look up on the amortization table 15.1, 30 years at 6%, and that factor ends up being $6, which means our monthly payment is 1,020. Okay, so that's our monthly payment, A. Now, the first payment is to be broken down into interest and principal. So remember, this was interest is equal to principal times rate times time. We have to figure out how much the interest is out of the 1,020 so that we could figure out how much the principal is. So if I have 170,000 in principal times 6% times 1 over 12, I end up with, let's see here, 170,000 times 6% divided by 12 is $850 of interest. And if my monthly payment is, my monthly payment is 1,020 and 850 is interest, right? I subtract that to get my principal of $170. So principal. Okay, and so C, the balance of the mortgage, means that I have to apply this $170 in principal against my mortgage. Well, if my mortgage was $170,000, that's the balance that's due, and I subtract the $170, I end up with $169,830 as my balance owed, balance due. Okay, move on. Jen Logan bought a home in Iowa for $110,000. She put down 20% and obtained a mortgage for 30 years at 5.5%. What's her monthly payment and total interest cost of the loan? Right, so if she has $110,000 as the loan, she puts down 20%. Well, I can multiply the 110 by the reciprocal, or 80%, to find out how much is being borrowed. And in that case, that ends up being $88,000. Okay. So she's financing $88,000, and we divide the $88,000 by 1,000 in order to get 88, or just drop the thousands there. And then we look up on the table 30 years at 5.5%, and we have a factor of 5.68, which means her monthly payment ends up being $499.84. That's the monthly payment. So the total cost of the loan, the total interest cost of the loan is, of course, all of her payments less how much she borrowed, the $88,000. So if it's 30 years and there's 12 months in a year, she's going to make 360 payments. So I take the $499.84, the monthly payment, and multiply it by 360, and I end up with $179,942.40 is how much she paid over the life of the loan. Well, to find out how much interest, we subtract out the amount she borrowed, which is $88,000, and we end up with a total interest of $991,942.40. Okay, so that's the interest cost of the loan. All right, next problem. Let's see here. Christine Sanders is concerned about the financing of a home. She saw a small Cape Cod style house that sells for $90,000. If she puts $10,000 down, or is that 10%? That's 10% down. Typo. So if she puts down 10%, what will her monthly payment be at 30 years for 5%, 30 years at 5.5%, 30 years at 6%, and 30 years at 6.5%, right? So what is the total cost of interest over the cost of the loan for each assumption? So basically we have 4 different assumptions here, and the only difference is going to be the percentage we use, which changes the factor. All right, so how much is she borrowing? Well, 90,000 times 90% is $81,000. Okay, and again, this 90% is the reciprocal, the opposite of the 10%. Okay, because remember, here's the full amount, 90,000. If we take out the down payment of 10% here, this remaining amount has to be 90%. That's the amount going to be financed. So we have 81,000, and when we look up on the table, we're going to divide that by 1,000 because the table is in thousands, which means we have 81 as the factor that we're going to use for all of these different assumptions. So we have A here, B here, C here, and D here. And they're all going to start with 81, right? Right, so, and they're all 30 years, so we know that there's 30 monthly payments, right? 30 years times 12 months means there's 360 monthly payments, right? So all we're doing basically is looking up the factors for 5%, 5.5%, 6, and 6.5. And when we do that, for 5%, it's 5.37. For 5.5, it's 5.68. For 6, it is 6, and for 6.5, it's 6.33. So this is, when we do the math on these, 81 times those factors, we get our monthly payments, which is $434.97, $460.08. 81 times 6 is 486, and 81 times 6.33 is 512.73. Now remember, these are all monthly payments. Okay, so we have to multiply by how many payments of 360. To find out how much we're going to pay over the course of the entire loan. So this ends up being $434.97 times 360 is $156,589.20. 460.08 times 360 is 165,628.80. 486 times 360 is 174,960. And 512.73 times 360 is 184,582.80. Right. And of course, it's asking us what is the total interest over the cost of the loan for each assumption, which means that now we subtract the 81,000 from each one of those, because that's our original loan amount. And we end up with 75,589.20. For this one, we end up with 84,628.80. For this one, we end up with 93,960. In this last one, we end up with 103,582.80. Okay, couldn't be more repetitive than that. Okay, right, so I'm going to pause here and pick up in the next video with the remaining two problems.